wrap up this series, Boundaries in Marriage, this morning. And I've got some awesome announcements for you for what's coming next and what's coming down the road. But we're going to wrap this up, and hopefully, how many of you can actually say, if you've been coming consistently throughout the series, that you've gotten some stuff out of this that's definitely going to help you in your relationship? Okay, well that's, usually it's one side of the room or the other side of the room, but it looks like we've got a good spread. There's an echo on my voice, Jose, and although I want to sound powerful and everything, an echo is not part of it. All right, does everyone have a worksheet? No? Okay, so usually what happens is if you're more concentrated on coming in and getting food than you are getting a worksheet, that's what happens. No offense, Patty. Oh, you brought food. Okay, get her a worksheet. Get her a worksheet. Who's got the worksheets? Did we leave them out there? All right. We are working on getting you. Anybody else need a worksheet? All right. Jessica Poop in the back needs one. Patty. Anybody else? You're not alone, so now's the time to raise your hand. Don't go without a worksheet because you're embarrassed. All right. All right, we're going to pray and we're going to get started. Father, we just come before you this morning, Lord. We're thankful for another day. We're thankful that we can get together and get information off of each other, help each other in our relationships. Lord, I pray that you would speak to each and every one of us today, that we can walk out of this place with something that we can use to help our relationships. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, so one of the things that we need to look at, this whole session is based on warning signs to help your marriage. A lot of people wind up having problems, and a lot of people say, I never saw that coming. I had no idea that that was going to happen in the relationship, because for whatever the reasons, there's a number of reasons, because we refuse to see, we're too occupied with other things to see. The list can go on and on as to what can affect our relationship. And so today we're going to talk about some of the signs that we need to look for to be able to know and be aware of. A lot of us would love to avoid being able to say no in life. If you work with me in ministry, most of the time, anytime I'll talk to somebody about ministry, one of the things that I impress upon people tremendously is you have got to be able to learn to be able to say no. If you can't say no, things in life will suck the life out of you. Because there's so many different things. If you're one of those people that every time you get asked to, why are you laughing, Art? No, I'm just kidding. Every time you get asked to do something, you're yes, because you want to do it for God, you want to please man, you want to look good in people's eyes. Listen, that's all well and good. God knows your heart and everything else. And I'm not just talking about ministry. I'm talking about all aspects of your life. You cannot say yes to everything. You cannot be everything to everybody. You have to have a balance in your life, work, home, relationship, kids, whatever the case may be, it's got to be a balance. And if you're saying yes to everybody else, something somewhere is going to break. Something's going to give. Because there's too much effort, too much time going into other things where it needs to be evenly distributed. Anybody disagree with that? I didn't think so. So, we have a hard time sometimes saying no. If we say no at work, it causes anxiety, and maybe it's going to upset our boss or something like that. But reality will dictate that in order for us to say yes to keeping a close marriage, we have to keep a close marriage. We have to say no to a lot of other things if you want your relationship to flourish. You have to be able to say no. If you have a life of yes to everything, that ultimately results in a no to your marriage. Oh, I said no. No. So, about your own life, and I'm going to put you on the spot. What's a recent decision to a yes that was something else, and a no to your marriage? Or a no to your relationship, for those of you that are not married yet? I know it's tough to raise your hand and go, okay, I blew it in this aspect, but what if somebody can learn from your mistake? Nobody? I ain't going there. An example? Well, an example is accepting overtime at work and not having time for your spouse because you're worried about the money, which, don't get me wrong, money's important, but your spouse is more important because you could have all the money in the world, and if you're by yourself, it don't make you happy. Right? So, nobody's there? Come on. Okay. So sometimes, and a lot of moms will be like, well, what do you mean? I'm a mother first and then I'm a wife second. You gotta figure out what works for you. I will tell you this, when it comes to blended families, mixed marriages, whatever the case may be, if you're coming into a relationship and the woman has kids, you better believe you're coming second. Ain't no two ways about it. And you need to be okay with that, or you're going to be one disappointed person. Because Mama Bear takes care of Baby Bear before she worries about Papa Bear. Okay? I'm telling you from experience, and I went into my relationship with Claudina knowing that that's the way it was going to be. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with that.
I think that's the case of any marriage.
That's probably true, but I think more so in a mixed marriage, because you already have an established relationship between mom and her kids, and now you're bringing somebody else in, which is to the benefit, yes, to the kids, but ultimately the mama first. And so before, yes, sir.
No, I've got to agree that blood comes first for most women, I think. It's the child that comes first, and you have to know that going in to make that marriage successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, you have an example.
Work stuff, there was promises I made, do things and follow through with work and
Okay. Okay. So when we talk about all these decisions that we have to make, and you know on a daily basis you make a lot of decisions that ultimately are going to affect your relationship. And your decisions, we've talked about priorities a number of times. Priorities, you got to have priorities in your relationship. If your priorities aren't in order in your relationship, then it gives the opportunity, you're opening up the floodgates of everything else to come in and submerge you in everything else but the relationship. So ultimately, listen, if you don't fight for your marriage, if you don't fight for your relationship, and what I mean by that is, some of you are thinking, well, we're not in a bad place. You don't have to be in a bad place. You could have the greatest marriage in the world today. You could have things going your way for a week or 2 weeks, and some of you think, oh my gosh, we haven't fought all week. That's awesome. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. But if you have to have the priorities that say, I fight for my relationship first and foremost. That has to be your priority. If it's not good for the relationship, it's not good for you. Oh, it's quiet in here, because by nature, do you think that we're selfish by nature? Right? I know some of you don't even want to nod your head to acknowledge the fact it's like, oh, I'm selfish. I'm selfish. You're selfish. And so am I. And so is your wife or your spouse or anything. Just that maybe we don't want to admit to it. Listen, you gotta look at the fact that there's intruders that can weaken the marriage bond. Those intruders are work, friends, kids. I'll be the first one to admit church. Listen, how many of you are involved in some way in the church? And I don't mean just showing up. I mean, you're involved in some way. Put your hands up. Okay. So that's a good amount. How many of you that are involved in one thing, and I know some of you are involved in more than one thing, have been asked to do multiple things? Raise your hand. Okay? That's a good percentage. So this would hold true in ministry, and don't get me wrong, I'm not bad-mouthing ministry, I'm not bad-mouthing your job, I'm not bad-mouthing anything, but I want you to understand what's going on here. If you're willing to volunteer for something at work, how many of you find that every time something else comes up, you're the person that they wind up asking? Anybody? Can I see a show of hands? The rest of you ain't working, or what? If there's a willingness on somebody's part to do something, and look, yeah, you can get ahead in your job by volunteering and doing things, and yeah, you can get ahead in ministry by volunteering and doing things, but if someone, there is a, well, I don't want to use that terminology, but, you know, sometimes people will take advantage of your willingness, right? And I love the secular worldly term that says, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. And you cannot let people assume that you're a weak person and can be manipulated or controlled into doing things that you probably feel in the back of your mind that you should do, but you know better than you should be doing, because it's going to affect the relationship. And if you have that mindset going into things, before you make that decision, you have to ask yourself, how is this going to affect my relationship? Again, if your relationship is one of your top priorities, then every decision that you make, listen to me carefully when I say every decision that you make is going to affect your relationship. Whether it affects your relationship with your kids, with your wife, with your husband, it's going to affect you. We make a lot of poor decisions every day. And so we need to work on trying to do that. You have to understand what those intruders are. So friends, kids, church, outside hobbies. You know, somebody can be into golfing or fishing so much that every chance you get, every time you save up enough money, I'm going golfing, I'm going fishing, I'm going hunting, I'm going whatever, you know? And unless your spouse is into that too, you're taken away from your relationship. I get it. If you want to go do something with the guys, okay, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but your relationship comes first. No, that's why I'm going hunting with my bros. No, I'm not talking about your relationship with your guy friends. I'm talking about your relationship with your significant other. So you have to make sure that that balance is there. You know, the other intruders can be something as simple as your parents or your in-laws. You know, how many of you feel like sometimes your parents, even as grown-up adults, try to manipulate your lives? What do you mean you're not coming for Christmas? Well, we've always come. You always, what do you mean? Oh, you're not going to his house. You come to my house first. You go to their house second. You go to their house second, come to my house first. You do Christmas Eve with me and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with them. Okay? And we're just talking about Christmas. What about what about your child's birthday? Grandparents. Oh no. See, that's like them having kids all over again. You know? So all of that so those can be intruders as well. And it's not just the in-laws or the outlaws, TV, internet, financial involvement, sports, shopping, addictions, and worst of all, affairs. You know, how many of you were here Friday night for tacos and dinner, or tacos and a movie? Man, we have almost 100 people here. If you weren't here, you missed out. Because not only was the movie awesome, but the food was bomb. Okay? It was seriously bomb. Huh? What? That was a lot of tacos. It was all gone. There was none left over. So the movie was powerful in the fact that, you know, listen, cheating is prevalent. Cheating is probably more prevalent in the church than it is in the world. Cheating goes on with pastors. Not this pastor, mind you. Okay? Being the fact that we're being recorded right now and everything. But I want to clarify, you know, pastors are not protected from anything. You have pastors that deal with struggles in pornography, both men and women, and you know, we suffer the same things that you do. We're normal human beings. Okay? But cheating is something that comes up every day. It may start off as something innocent. And you have to protect yourself and your relationship from allowing that. Sometimes it's hard to know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable as far as mingling with the other gender. You understand what I'm saying? And when you set those boundaries for yourself, you have to have your spouse included, because what may be acceptable for you may absolutely drive your spouse nuts. And if it drives your spouse nuts, it's in your best interest not to do it. No, not just a man, a woman too. Oh, amen. I'm sorry. So you have to be really careful. And you know, there's people out there that are okay with being with somebody that's committed. There is people out there that are okay being in the middle of someone's marriage. Man, that's just wrong. Okay? That's just wrong. You have to protect yourself. And what makes marriage strong against those intruders? What makes your marriage strong enough to be able to resist all those intruders? The extramarital affairs, the TV, the internet. What makes it strong? Man, I know somebody's got to know something in this place. Josh.
Communication.
I don't know. See, I'm picking up people that raise their hand.
Teamwork and prayer.
Teamwork and prayer. I like that. Go ahead, Sonia.
Well, now that you pick me,
Uh-huh.
I think communication.
Communication.
Communication is huge.
Absolutely.
If you neglect your spouse, whether it's a female or a male, you're going to find that one day you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, wait, when did all this happen? And then you have to like go back and start.
Exactly true. Exactly true. Did you guys have hands up?
I guess about what you're talking about. Every day, making a conscious effort to put your relationship first in your decision making.
Putting the other person first. Listen, guys, here's the thing. It's, you know, and I know if we went through this room and we asked everybody, how long have you been married, how long have you been married, how long have you been married, when are you getting married, how long have you been married, how long have you been married, you know, we've all been married for a different period of time, okay? But I can tell you this, that regardless of how long you've been married, we sometimes are still missing the boat. It doesn't matter how long you've been married. I mean, you got Bill and Clara here. They're not paying attention, but they're here. And why do you think they're here? I'm just going to put you on the spot for a second. Do you guys still have disagreements? She's squeezing his hand. Everything okay, Buttercup? Oh, you better be good. So, you know, it doesn't matter how long you've been married, how old you are. The bottom line is we still have issues. And one of the things that I notice is, you know, men are fairly vocal. Most of us are fairly vocal. We'll talk about what our problems are. We get it off our chest, but we usually do it in anger. Okay? Women, on the other hand, will give you all kinds of signs, and men don't hear it because we're just a little slow. Okay? Stop. Just stop. I'm giving you the fact that we're a little slow. You don't need to pounce on us. Okay? But the thing is is that I know in my own experiences, I've had plugging, and some of you guys can agree with me, please, otherwise I'm going to seek help. They'll say, but I've been telling you. And I'm like, when have you been telling me? You know? And, okay, and then you have to realize, okay, you've been telling me, but I haven't been really listening. You know? Stop it. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. No, but I want to know, women, stop. Okay, women, stop. I want to know, men, has that happened to you before? Oh, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. I feel so much better now. So,
Share an email, share your calendar, and then, you just look at your calendar.
Well, that's true. But one of the things that I will tell you that will help you overcome this, and we talked about this before, is when your woman is talking to you, the best possible thing that you can do is to turn around and repeat what she said. So she tells you, la 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 la. And then you turn around and you look at her, key word, look at her, okay? Look at her. And then you say, so what I hear you saying is, right? What I hear you saying is, and right then she will melt. Oh my gosh, she's listening to me. Oh my gosh, she's paying attention. Try it. Try it and tell me if it doesn't work. Okay? But, let me ask you this. Is there something that's made it hard in the past to strengthen your marriage? Is there something that's held you back from strengthening your boundaries? Maybe lack of awareness, like we just talked about, lack of information, busyness, fear of closeness, or something else? You have to go back and you have to think about your personal relationship, and you have to think, what is getting in the way? Now again, I'm going to tell you, that for some of you it's like, man, it's all good right now. It's all good. Okay, awesome. Maybe you should be up here talking to everybody about how awesome your relationship is. But the reality of it is it's not always great. There are things that come up, and how well you deal with them. Well, listen, if I told you, if you do this, this, and this, and this, you will cut down on 45% of your disagreements, why would you not do it? Right? I mean, it's kind of like, let's look at something as basic as your car. If you don't change the oil in your car, the life of your car will be cut by 50 to 75%. Fact. Fact. If you never change the oil in your car. The oil in your car is the blood and lifeline of your car. Okay? Your relationship needs constant maintenance. If you do not maintain your relationship, it will cause your relationship to last 50 to 75% less than if you did. Oh, shoot. It's all about talking. It's all about sharing. It's all about communicating. Every time that you invest in your relationship, you are maintaining it. Okay? We won't get into changing the oils or giving your wife a tune-up or whatever the case might be. That's, that's not what we're talking about. I know women are more concerned about trade-in value on their husband than anything else. Okay? Right? When do I get the upgrade? I thought I was just doing a 2-year lease. You have to maintain the relationship. You have to maintain the relationship. So you need to look back and you need to look at, is there something that's causing those kind of things not to happen? What are the intruders? And if you look at, I don't know, you just have to look at your history. Look back, go back. Do you have a comment?
In my experience, a lot of this is discipline too. I mean, when you're talking about an affair, it's not even just a physical, it can be an emotional affair, right? And so for our marriages, it's discipline. Just like you want to lose weight, you got to be disciplined not to eat. You want to exercise, say we're going to exercise, you got to be disciplined to do that. Marriages is the same thing. And discipline ourselves to put it down
I was with you up until the diet. That's messed up, but yeah. No, I agree. It is. It's all about discipline. You know, I love the emotional affair. It's like, you know, and if this applies to you, again, I love to say, you know, if the shoe fits Cinderella, then you got to wear it. But when you have a problem with somebody, and you go to talk about it with somebody, you open the door. Especially when it's somebody of the opposite sex. If you have a problem with your husband, and you go talk to another man, you open the door. Okay? Because every man, listen, men are, okay. We are opportunists. We are opportunists. We like to, you know, men like to hunt. Okay? And so, when you have somebody that's vulnerable, if it's the wrong guy, he's going to see how he can take advantage of that. Oh, you know, I hear what you're saying. You don't deserve that. You need a guy that's going to treat you like a princess. You need a guy, and the woman's like, oh my gosh, he totally gets me. Oh my God. You know, I haven't felt this way in so long. Well, that's because you're telling somebody else instead of your husband. How's your husband going to make it better if you don't talk to him? You're giving the door open. And I'm not saying that just for the ladies, I'm talking about the men too. Because that happens all the time. And don't think that women are not opportunists either. You know? Okay, so he makes this much, less eventual alimony. Yeah, we can still live on that. Listen, you gotta, all the intruders that come into your relationship, all those problems are ultimately caused by either adding the wrong thing, inappropriate people or bad influences to the marriage, or subtracting the good things, which is closeness and honesty, from the marriage, or both. Okay? So, you have to look at when a marriage contains conflict, or when a marriage contains hurt, we tend to busy ourselves in other people and other activities. Activities kind of works like anesthesia. Kind of numbs us to what's going on. You know, that's why romance novels became so big with women. It takes a woman to a completely different place than her normal life. She gets swept into the Prince Charming effect and all of those things. Those activities, they anesthetize the deficits and the pains and even the marital connection. Okay? So you have to be really conscious of the things that you allow in. Think about just for a minute how busy you are. All the things that you got going on in your life. What indications, if any, do you have that it's an unhealthy busyness for you and your marriage? I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm just asking you to reflect on your life and think about all the things that keeps you away from your spouse. And is there anything that's causing a negative effect, or what keeps you from that place? You know, and maybe even you may have a close friend that can help you evaluate that. Not your spouse. Because sometimes your spouse is selfish and it's like, well, you know, you don't, but it's like, well, wait a second, I still need to work, I still need a paycheck, you know. Being in love, I love that saying, it's like, I love you so much I can live anywhere. Oh yeah, right. Okay? You might be able to live with me anywhere for about 6 months and then you need a better job, okay? You need to make more money because I'm tired of living here. Okay, yes.
My grandmother used to tell me, when she said, when you get older, remember one thing, when there's no money, love goes out the window.
I would like to say that's true, but man, that better not be the case. Because there's going to be a time in your life where you're going to go through a situation where you're going to become unemployed, or you're going to become sick, or vice versa for your spouse, and you better be there to support them. Right? If you don't have the attitude that if God forbid your spouse gets sick and you're going to stick by their side no matter what, you have a problem. Marriage is not convenient. Marriage is commitment. Marriage is not, hey, through good, you know, it's like, oh, I remember we took our vows in good times and in good times. No, I'm pretty sure it says in good times and bad. In sickness and in health. Okay? So, y'all can enjoy the good times and the healthy times, but when the stuff hits the fan, you better be committed to that other person. And you know how you can bring yourself to think about that? God forbid you got put in that position. You better hope to God that your spouse is going to stick by your side. So the same thing, you know, it's like, okay, let's go spiritual for a moment. Reaping and sowing. Okay? Reaping and sowing. Some of you don't know what that means, but I'm going to tell you, what you put out, you get. I don't mean that in the way that y'all are thinking twisted. Okay? I mean, whatever efforts you put out into the relationship, why would you expect anything less than what you put out to get back? So you want to treat your spouse like garbage? Why do you expect them to treat you any better? You want to talk to them like garbage? Why do you expect them to treat you any better? They may be a better person, but you're going to get exactly what you put out. I've always told you from the very beginning, if you could just concentrate on putting the other person first, and they put you first, man, what a good life it could be. Oh, don't get me wrong, you're still going to have problems, but it will eliminate a tremendous amount of them because you've eliminated selfishness. And that's one of the big things that we have a problem with, is getting over the selfishness aspect. You know? I've been doing this so long, what about me? I've been raising my kids for this long, it's my time. I've been working my job for 15 years. I need a little something for me. Okay, but when you die, you got eternity. But for right now, you got a job to do. You know? Well, I'm preaching good. Yeah. I'm not even trying to preach. I'm supposed to be teaching a lesson. That's what happens when I'm gone for a week. Shoot. Let me miss a week and I'll come back with fire. So, I'm going to have to watch this one on. Think about when, if ever, have a date night in your life and getaways, which is important to nourish your marriage, been disappointing because of unresolved conflicts. How many of you have had something scheduled? I don't care if it's just going to dinner. And something happens before you leave. And see, the wife will do this more than the husband will do this. I don't even want to go. I just don't want to go. Let's just forget it. I don't even want to go. How many of you have that happened to? Right? No. Well, I can imitate the wife better than I can imitate the husband, so I just go with that. No, the husband, you know, I think the wife says that more than the man. You're not in your experience? Okay. How many of you wives have done that before? Raise your hand.
How many what?
Wives have done that before. Okay, how many husbands have actually done that before? Thank you. Well, that's close. Okay, 70-30. So, but the man would be like, well, just forget it. We're not going. The woman will say, I don't want to go. The man's like, we ain't going. That's it. We done. Right? But and the worst thing is, man, if you're just going to dinner, you're going to the movie, ain't no thing. But if you're going on vacation, and that vacation's already paid for, and it's like you're supposed to be going for 3, 5, 7 days, you're thinking, dang, man, I got to get this thing resolved because man, I paid some money to get this thing going, and I don't want to spend the next 7 days. To try to make things right. I want to be reciprocal. Am I right? Yeah. So you got to think about that. We get those unresolved conflicts. It's not good. So what did you do? Or if the situation is, what are you doing? What could you do to bring a real issue to light and deal with it? Man, I can't tell you, let me tell you this. If you're the kind of person that holds everything in, it's like, oh, I don't want to fight, and I don't want to do this, and you hold everything in, you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
And I mean that seriously. Stress causes disease. It causes cancer. It causes heart problems. It causes mind problems. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that if you have an issue, if you have an unresolved, you need to express yourself, and you need to express yourself in a way that the other person can understand. If you're going around and you're expressing yourself and your spouse or your significant other doesn't get it, don't have that attitude. It's like, man, you don't get it. I've been talking and talking and talking, you don't get it. But see, you communicate in a different language than the other person does. You may not understand it. What do you mean, Alan? We both speak English. Yeah, no, you speak woman and he speaks man. And we speak differently. You may say the same words, but they have a different meaning. When you say nothing, honey, what's wrong? Nothing. It does not mean nothing. It means something. No, tell me, what's wrong? Nothing. Right? So we're asking you what's wrong so we can try to resolve it. You're telling us nothing's wrong, but there's really something wrong. You just don't feel, well, do I have to tell you what's wrong? Don't you already know what's wrong? Yes, because I'm a mind reader. I should know that. You have to communicate. You have to find a way that you can communicate to the other person that they're going to understand. We're talking about intruders that can weaken the marriage. We already know that all those things, you have to look at what intruders are threatening your marriage bond. And you have to take action against them. We talk about, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys are subscribed to Fusion Marriage on Facebook? That's not a lot of you. And I guarantee you 99% of you are on Facebook. You should be on Facebook. Okay? You should be on Fusion Marriage. I've been doing, and this is not about me, but I wanted to ask, how many of you have actually seen the Marriage in a Minute videos that I've been doing? Okay? Man, I don't get that many likes when you It's like, oh yeah, that's good. But I will tell you this. I'm getting like 80 to 160 or some of them at 350 views. Okay? I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for you. I really truly feel like this is God inspired, and you should be sharing those things. Not so that, not for any other reason that it's good information. How many of you actually have watched them and said, man, well, I know, Mike, you've said some nice things about them. 2 of them. Yes.
Those videos, are they shareable on Facebook?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
When we did that live and shared it, it didn't go. It just stayed.
If you press the share button, it'll share. That's all you gotta do is press that share button and it'll say, share now or make a comment. And you can put like, Pastor Allen blocks the house, or, he's awesomeness, something like that. But if you're not a friend of Fusion Marriage on Facebook, or not a friend, but because it's a fan page, like the page. That's how you can stay connected. How many of you saw the fact on Facebook, either EFA or Fusion, that you saw this? Okay? I've already told you to save the date, May 21st. Okay? As Donald Trump would say, this is going to be huge. Okay? So we'll talk about a little bit more about this later on. Okay? So there's things out there that can help. Overall, you have to decide what you're going to do. Okay? You have to do things to continually invest in the relationship to make it work. Just like the car. Just like the car. Let's talk about submission. Ooh, that's not a good word. A man loves to use it because it says it in the Bible, right, Pastor Allen? Wives, submit to your husbands. I can't tell you how many guys have come to me and said, can you tell my wife, can you just show her in the Bible where it says, wives, submit to your husband? I said, yes, I can. I can also show you where it says, submit also to your wives. Right? And the man be like, what? See, you can't read the book, and you can't just pick out the part that you like and use that to your advantage. And if you're going to throw something biblically in somebody's face, you better be ready for the word to come back and slap you right upside the head. Okay? Because the Bible's not unfair. The Bible is fair. And it only says, wives, submit to your husband if the man is leading the house like Christ. So if you're a jerk of a guy, and you're trying to get your woman to submit to you because you're the man of the house, ain't flying, brother.
How's that working?
Yeah, how's that working for you? Right?
It's not.
So, listen, the idea of submission is never meant to allow someone to overstep another's boundaries. A leader is a giving servant who is committed to the best of one he or she is leading. Okay? If you didn't catch that, I want you to listen again. The idea of submission is never meant to allow someone to overstep another's boundaries. A leader is a giving servant who is committed to the best of the ones he or she is leading. If a wife is resisting a husband who is loving, truthful, protective, and providing for her well-being, then something's wrong. And likewise, if a husband isn't being loving, truthful, protective, and providing for his wife's well-being, something is wrong. Okay? Now, I know a lot of you are sitting there, oh, man, I've been trying to tell them something's wrong for a long time. Now, did you hear what Pastor Allen was saying? Did you hear that? I wrote it down for you. Let me read it to you. Loving, truthful, protective, and providing of his wife's well-being. Hello? My well-being. Where you at in all this? So, that's a good question to ask yourself. Where you at? Is there a new understanding or greater appreciation of submission that you have as a result of what I just said? Submission is being able to be a servant, first and foremost. If you look at, I think I have it in your notes, Ephesians 5:22, is it in there? Yeah, it's on the top of the back of the first page. It says, for wives, this means submit to your husband as to the Lord, for a husband is the head of his wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He is the Savior of his body, the church. You got to focus on yourself. The only person that you can change is not your spouse. Okay? You cannot change your spouse. You can't change your spouse. One more time. You can't change your spouse. Okay? The only one that can change your spouse is who? It's like my father. My father can change my spouse in an instant. No, it's the Lord. Okay? That's the only one that can change your spouse. You have to think about it. What changes in yourself or in your attitudes or in your actions, in your words, could you make in light of the passage from Ephesians? You have to be a servant to one another. Don't take the word servant out of context. You know, being a servant means putting others before yourself. It doesn't mean, hey, servant, go fetch me a dip of water. Servant, go make me do my laundry. You know, that's not what it's all about. And you may laugh, but there's actually people that walk around thinking that that's how it rolls. You know, there really is. I know, I've seen it. So that's not how it rolls. Now, after submission, there's suffering. Okay? Suffering is at least the kind that God has called us to experience, designed to help us adapt to reality the way it really is. You know, for those of you that follow, read, pray, go to church, did Jesus suffer? Was he the prime example of a servant? Are we called to emulate Jesus Christ? 3 yeses, 0 no's. So submission is part of trying to emulate Christ. Suffering is part of emulating Christ. for those of you that have suffered in your lifetime, you've been through the school of suffering. Have you learned something?
Yes. Hopefully.
Right? I learned I don't want to suffer no more. You know, everything that we go through that hurts is to teach us. Listen, it's not my first choice either of how I get taught. But sometimes the lessons that you learn the best are the ones that stick with you. How many of you have a scar on your body? Some kind of scar. Every time you see that scar, what happens? It reminds you of what happened to cause that scar. Right? Man, I'm telling you, I'm rolling right now. You all better be paying attention. This is good. Okay? The emotional scars that you have, the things that you've gone through in your life, the things that you have gone through in your relationship are scars to remind you to not go there again. To not go back. You need to be able to look at that scar and go, this is what I got from that. You know, if you have a big old scar, you know, when my kids were younger, my kids were in the room and they're playing. This is when like WWF was big. Not that it's not big now, but you know. And so they're jumping on the bed, WWFing each other. That's Worldwide Federation of Wrestling. I mean, you're like WWF. What the heck? So one of my kids gets up on the dresser, jumps off the dresser, catches his leg on the dresser, and requires a lot of stitches. You know. Thank God I was at work and my wife dealt with that. But the thing is every time he looks at that scar, he's, you know, it's probably, I mean, if I know my son, he probably looks at the scar and goes, that was stupid. You know, I did that. But the same thing holds true with the scars that we go through in our relationships. You can look back at every single one and go, man, that was stupid. And I'm not trying to use that word too much or too strong. But you know what? The reality of it is how many of you can admit that we do some stupid stuff? You know? You can make the word nicer if you want to. It's stupid. If it's not intelligent, what's the opposite of not intelligent? I'm sorry, what's the opposite of intelligent? Well, you can say non-intelligent. I like stupid. It stands out a little bit better. Because sometimes you got to remind yourself. Because you're a hard person to please, so if you tell yourself, well, that wasn't too intelligent, or you look at yourself and you go, man, that was stupid, which one are you going to remember better? You know? I know, someone just tapped someone on the shoulder and says, he's stupid? So, you suffering, listen, there's lessons to be learned in everything that we do. There's lessons that you learn from any pain that you've known in your marriage, any pain that you've learned from past relationships. You know, there's very few of you that got married because you were high school sweethearts. You usually went through your puppy love and you got your heart broken at 8, you know. I thought we would be together forever, you know. You know, when you go, broke up what? By recess, you know, and then you know, maybe you had a girlfriend or a boyfriend or what you consider to be a boyfriend or girlfriend in junior high or high school, whatever the case may be. But you know, you've had your training for relationships. You've had your training for heartbreak, right? Because you know, when you had your first crush and it didn't pan out, you know, you felt like, oh my God, you're gonna die, right? I'll never love again. You're 9 years old, you'll be fine. Okay. So. But you remember those things, and hopefully you learn from them to be able to bring in. And when you bring those things in, those lessons that you learn, you could be learning from a current struggle right now in your relationship. If you got a struggle going on in your relationship, think about, what am I supposed to learn out of this? You know, I learned that my spouse is totally impatient. Maybe you're the one that needs to be more patient. You know? Last Wednesday, Brother Sam Rangel brought the word in the church. It was a good word, man, because, and I've said this before, I'm pretty sure he got his message from me, but the thing is that when things go wrong in our lives, man, man, we love to blame everybody else except ourselves. Well, my spouse doesn't understand me. My spouse doesn't have patience for me. My spouse doesn't communicate the way that I want. Well, you know, maybe everything that, and I spoke about this on Valentine's Day, maybe everything that you want, your expectations are so high that just because it's not happening in the way that you want, doesn't mean that it's not happening. You have to evaluate your expectations and the way that you think that things should happen, because they're not you. The other person's not you. So you can't think that everything that they're going to do is, well, that's exactly how I thought it should be. Yeah, but how do you expect everybody else to know exactly how you think it should be? There's a lot of benefits that suffering can bring to a marriage. And maybe that you might experience from a current struggle or a single struggle. They're listed on that page too. You might grow in faith that our unseen God is helping and supporting us. You may learn to hold on to one's values in tough times. You may become a truthful person when truth is not popular. Maybe you're going to delay gratification for a future and better goal. Or stay connected to others instead of withdrawing in self-absorption. Or learn to live with forgiveness and for an imperfect spouse. I talked about that last week in one of my Marriage in Minutes. Imperfections. Let me just clue you in on something. You're not perfect. I know everyone gets quiet and goes, man, you don't know me. You are not perfect. Neither am I. But when you have a friendship with somebody, you know how you can tell what a good friendship is? A good friendship is somebody who accepts you for who you are. Right? They accept you with your imperfections. Why do you think it's any different for your spouse? Your spouse married you probably not knowing your imperfections. Right? And then when they saw it, it was like, oh, Lord. You know? But the reality of it is they married you the same way, not knowing your imperfections, and slowly but surely they came out. Right? And it's an acceptance of the other person's imperfections. If you're looking for perfection, you better look to Jesus, because that's the only perfection that there is. You're not there yet. I'm not there yet. So we keep striving. Give grace to the other person. You know, you gotta love when problems arise in marriage. The first thing to do is establish that you desire the best for your mate, even if they've not been a loving person themselves. You have to love. That's one of the greatest things. God is love. So you have to be there. You gotta be there. So the other thing is others. Others, not only is it your responsibility to speak from love, but it's also your responsibility to be receiving care, support, and encouragement from God and from others outside your marriage. You know the saying, you become what you hang around. You hang around garbage, you're going to become garbage. You know? I mean, Pastor Fred likes to say you can't soar with eagles when you run with turkeys. You know? I like mine better. But, you know, whatever floats your boat. It's whatever it is. It's kind of like, you know, whatever you put in your mind, that's going to go to your heart. So don't surround yourself with negative people, ungodly places, things like that. You know, and when you do have that, you know, it's kind of like being on a diet. You know, it's like you try to be good during the week, and then you go, I'm going to be good all week because I deserve a cheat day on the weekend. Okay, that's fine. But if you leave the house with your almonds and your soy milk, and you give your spouse a kiss goodbye, and you get to work and you can't wait, you're first in line for the roach coach. And you already threw out the almonds on the way to work. You know, you not only are you, I mean, I know your spouse probably will never find out, unless you get oil on your shirt. But God's gonna know, and ultimately you're deceiving yourself. So you gotta be okay with your thing. You gotta take ownership. Almost no marriage problems where one spouse contributes 100% and the other 0. Whatever there is a problem in your relationship, whatever problems arise, whatever arguments happen, I tell this to people all the time, you cannot have an argument by yourself. You look funny. The only way an argument transpires is if two people give in. So when an argument takes place, you have a percentage of responsibility in that argument, regardless of what the percentage is. That's why I'm big on timeouts. Before it even goes there, you got to put a smile on your face and go timeout. I love you. I don't want to fight. Let's figure out another way to do this. You got to listen. Arguing. The thing is, you have to take ownership for the part that you're playing in the problem. How many of you are defensive? Right? If your spouse comes to you and starts accusing you of something, the first thing that we do is we go into defensive mode. We're going to go into, yeah, but you don't, and everyone starts pointing fingers at each other and pointing out the other person's weakness and why you did this, and you're trying to justify why you did that. And man, I get it. I mean, I live it every day. I find myself like, man, I took one here, and I took one here, and I got my, yeah. You get tired. But the thing is we have this self-righteous attitude. It's like, I didn't do anything wrong, but you did wrong. You did wrong, but you did wrong. But man, you're playing a part. Whatever the part is, big or small, you're still in the play. So, instead of having your role be negative, have your role be positive. Don't be the one to defend yourself or attack the other person. Be the person that's like, you know what? Let's not argue about it. Let's fix it. How are we going to fix it? Because usually, guys, if you ask your woman, how can I fix this? I promise you, she will tell you how to fix it. Baby, I'm sorry. Tell me how I can fix it so I don't do it again. Well, you got to start listening to me. When I talk, I need you to not be watching TV. I need you to look right in my eyes. I don't need you to be watching the game. If you shut off the game, you can just watch me, Yeah. Listen, it ain't all about the women, guys. I'm not picking on the guys because women, y'all got your stuff too. Oh, if a guy comes to you, here, let me just make it even. Okay? If a guy's talking to you about a problem and you getting ready, you in the mirror doing your eyelashes, and doing your eyebrows, and your little blush. It's like, can I talk to you? Oh, I'm listening. Because what she's doing is she's looking at you through the mirror as she's doing her makeup. Right? No, don't go there.
I got one better than that. When you go to open up and you say, I got to talk to you about something, they go,
right.
Like, what did you do now?
Right.
No, I didn't. We'll talk about it later.
But it's the same thing. If they come in and say, I need to talk to you, the first thing I do is to look at the credit card limit. It's like, because when a woman comes and talks to you, it's usually financial. When a man comes and talks to you, it's usually, man, he screwed up. Because most of the time, if men don't screw up, it's like, I don't need to tell her. It's like, then when you get busted, it's like, oh man, I need to go tell her. Because the worst thing that can happen is they find out before you tell them. Okay? Don't be that person. Communicate. Okay? Taking ownership. And then there's an invitation. Whatever the problem between you and your spouse is, invite them to change before you set limits. Set those limits with empathy and love and request that they make a change. An invitation can be a prelude to having some set consequences. If you have a problem with your spouse and you go, look, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I need to make me feel better. If you could just help me with, man, but if you go to somebody and you start laying out demands, man, don't wave around. I can't say my ass. So, don't be waving around your finger. Don't be pointing at the other person. You need to stop doing this, and I'm tired of this, and I'm tired of that. Man, I don't know who you think you're talking to. That's the person that you made vows with before God. If you have a problem with waving around your fingers, maybe you need to put your hands behind your back and hold your hands together before you go start talking. Okay? Maybe, I mean, I'm just telling you, you want things to stay the same, or you want things to get better. I don't care if you're 20 years old, or 30 years old, or 40 years old, or 50 years old, you still got learning to do. Me too. I'm sitting here and going, ooh, I like the hands behind my back thing. Maybe I should try that myself. As you can tell, I'm a guy that talks with my hands all the time. So even if I have a disagreement with somebody, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's my wife or a friend or somebody, you know, I don't have a problem with pointing, but I have a problem with talking with my hands. Man, if you duct tape my hands together while I try to do a sermon, you might as well just have someone else speak. Because I need to move my hands, but if I'm going to confront somebody, I need to put my hands up. I'm going to try that. But so if you see me talking to you with my hands behind my back, you know I got it. You know I got a little something going on. All right. So after that, warning. When you warn your spouse, you got to tell them something painful might happen in the future, that this behavior will determine what happens. That's not a threat. Don't confuse warning with a threat. If you do this, something bad is going to happen to you. Okay? But the thing is, if you're being hurt, then you have to express the fact, look, you know, if you continue to do this, then all it does is want to cause me to shut down. You know, that's kind of a warning. And then you got to have patience. Silent suffering is not patience. Patience allows the process to happen while you're providing love and truth and the ingredients of growth. Consequence. When love, support, invitation, warning, and patience are in place, you may have to follow through on your consequence. Consequences protect you and also help your spouse deal with the reality of their actions. Okay? You know that for a reaction, there's a reaction. There are consequences to things that we do. You know? It's not unrealistic to have those things happen. And then there's renegotiation. A lot of boundaries can be changed over time as the spouse matures and changes. And what you make external can become internalized in your marriage as it becomes a part of who you two are. And then there's forgiveness. Finally, to be actively and constantly in the process of forgiveness. Forgive is not to cancel a debt. Hear me. It's your responsibility to both forgive your spouse and to both request forgiveness from your spouse. You know, boundaries involve risks that can disrupt the process of marriage growth. Some of those things are blaming, and some of those things are judging, and some of those things are laying a guilt trip on your spouse, or being unable to let go of the last problem that you guys had, or taking too much responsibility for your spouse's issues. If your spouse has issues, man, I need to get a retainer. If your spouse has issues, you do not need to take responsibility for your spouse's issues. Don't try to cover your spouse. Acknowledge your spouse. Now, don't get me wrong. You are required to have your spouse's back. Okay? You are supposed to be a united front, back to back, no enemy allowed to attack each other's back. But when there is a problem, you do not justify the problem. It's kind of like, you know, it's just a quick example. It's kind of like the guy that has a drinking problem that when he gets drunk, he's an angry drunk and he winds up hitting his wife. Okay? So the wife goes and she meets her girlfriend. She's got the makeup on the best she can to cover the little bit of black eye that she's got. And her girlfriends are like, what happened? Did he hit you again? Yeah, but it was probably my fault, or you know, that happens, and you know, I didn't have his dinner ready when he came home from happy hour or something like that. Man, that's a crock. Okay? I'm just using that as an example. But what I'm saying is you don't cover those things. You address those things. Okay? Otherwise, you start to become a victim. Are we good? Yep. All right. Cool. So, I know I'm holding you late, so let me just run a couple things by you real quick.